Kingdom Hearts Recoded is one of the more interesting spin-offs in the series. Being a DS remake of a phone game, there's not much story that you're missing out on if you never get around to playing it, but this game is unironically one of the sickest entries in the series. The team that made these DS games already has a reputation for somehow finding ways to outshine the main Kingdom Hearts team, but they cooked with this game. Sadly, I have no footage of the really cool stuff this game has because clearly fun is never an option in any of the ideas this channel explores, but even the basic mechanics we have at our disposal exude more swag than any post-KH2 game wishes it could have. The premise of the story is that after Kingdom Hearts 2, Michael Mouse and his associates are analyzing the journal from KH1 that gets erased for plot reasons, and they create a digital recreation of Sora to investigate the worlds in the journal and clear up the bugs preventing the analysis. As you explore the worlds, the larger story unfolds, and Sora and Riku kiss at the end. As this game takes place inside of a computer, you spend most of your playtime inside of system sectors. These segments show up whenever Sora hits a roadblock in the story, usually because of a glitch making something non-canon to the Kingdom Hearts extended universe. Inside these system sectors, the goal is to find and defeat bugged enemies, which are like normal enemies, but with specific color-coded buffs that range from no problem at all to stress-induced heart palpitations. Blue enemies are invisible, yellow enemies move twice as fast, red enemies become immune to staggering and attack more frequently, and green enemies become larger, get increased health and defense, and are also immune to staggering. The goal in every world is to find the keyhole, which is the source of all the bugs in a world, and as Destiny Islands is the tutorial world, it's really the only point of interest here. Much like Chain of Memories, Recoded is also a different flavored version of KH1, so Darkseid is the first boss of the game. Not a hard boss by any means, but seeing as the last time I played Recoded was nearly 10 years ago and I didn't have access to Cure this time around, I was a little scared. With the tutorial boss defeated, we move on to Traverse Town. Traverse Town is the world that fills my heart with childlike whimsy the most because as a kid, I wanted this game so bad when it came out and I didn't end up getting to play it until like 6 years after the game's release. So a core memory of mine is watching an old long play of the game on my family computer and fighting the urge to click the big green play button for the free Sonic the Hedgehog game off to the side of the video that lit up my simian brain like nothing else in this world. After diving into a few more system sectors and fighting the sentient block snake, we rescue Huey, Dewey, and Louie and access the keyhole to fight the boss of the world. Most of Recoded's boss fights aren't actually traditional fights and are instead mini-games of some kind. Guard Armor's gimmick transforms the game into a 2D auto-scrolling segment where you have to get through 3 levels, with the third one being the boss fight itself. Thankfully, the stakes aren't really that high until the boss fight, and the game graciously refills your health between each level. So aside from being minorly inconvenienced from getting crushed out of reality, the first 2 sections are fine. These minigame segments take away your command deck, which is no problem for us, but you can still pick up special commands from the levels that let you do really powerful attacks, and I decided to not use them to stay true to the challenge. Guard Armor has literally 2 moves, and it took nearly my entire health bar to figure that out. Patient is the best way to describe my gameplay here, but we get through it and move on to Wonderland. In Wonderland, everyone has conveniently fallen victim to the tragedy of early onset Alzheimer's, and it's up to us to run around the world collecting inklings in hopes that we can jog poor Alice's memory. Choosing the worst possible choice between the 3 rooms in front of me first, this maze was making me question my own neurological functions, and I don't really want to talk about it anymore. I love Wonderland in this game because every section of this world's story targets a very specific part of my humor. From the unreasonable amount of card soldiers all the way to the larger body, this world just makes me giggle the whole way through. After helping jog Grandma's memory, we finally uncover the whereabouts of the keyhole. The gimmick of this world's boss fight is a sort of on-rails shooter, and it works pretty well once you turn your brain off. Recoded's Olympus Coliseum is probably the most unique world in the entire franchise. It starts immediately with the keyhole and turns the game into a more traditional style turn-based RPG where you have to go from floor to floor looking for an exit until it culminates into a boss fight at the bottom of the labyrinth. As you progress, you'll pick up Hercules and Cloud on the way, and while it's definitely jarring at first, it can be pretty fun once you get used to it. The strategy for this world relies heavily on the licenses you pick up as you progress. Licenses offer passive buffs to your party that help out tremendously when you're not able to just use commands to nuke the screen for fun. Olympus is actually a pretty short segment compared to the rest of the game. Once you beat the final boss, you're able to come back and do more floors than you previously could during the story, and you get something really good for doing this, but more on that later. You may have noticed by this point that I have been exclusively rocking the Kingdom Key this whole time, but after Olympus this changes, and I'll now take this opportunity to explain how Keyblades work in this game. Keyblades don't have stats tied to them like they traditionally do in the other games. Instead, they have abilities tied to them that affect how they perform. As you attack enemies and hit blocks, you'll build up your clock gauge in the lower right corner, and as it levels up, you'll unlock more abilities from your equipped Keyblade until it eventually maxes out and you can use your finish command. The reason why the Kingdom Key has been used up to this point is because it has an ability called Attack Boost on it by default, and while it's already a really good ability even on a normal playthrough, it's especially helpful in this challenge because that's literally all we're doing. But now that we have the Olympia, we'll be using that instead. Most Keyblade abilities in this game are just passive buffs, but two of them fundamentally change your entire moveset, these abilities being Sonic Arts and Impact Arts. The Sonic Arts moveset has a lot more hits at the cost of weaker damage, and the Impact Arts moveset has stronger damage at the cost of a slower combo. But both of these abilities are significantly better than most other Keyblade abilities, and we use Olympia for its Impact Arts. Olympia is a good Keyblade when you unlock it, but becomes a great Keyblade once you start leveling it up. Whenever you defeat an enemy and recode it, you'll gain 1 experience point for whatever Keyblade you have equipped at the time, and as you level your Keyblades up, you'll unlock more abilities to choose from for the clock gauge. The Olympia gets Attack Boost at level 2, and even though it reduces your clock gauge to 2 levels, Impact Arts and Attack Boost is a disgustingly powerful combination that is well worth the shorter gauge. Agrabah marks the halfway point of the game and has a pretty significant difficulty spike, which is great when you're playing on critical mode without here. Thankfully, Agrabah doesn't have many gimmicks to it besides this one time freeze segment where you have more than enough time to find Iago. Agrabah is also the first time we see green enemies in a system sector, and I'm pretty sure I blocked this part out as a trauma response because the fear I felt was real and I wish I had captured that on camera. Agrabah is a pretty straightforward world, you literally go in a straight line through it, but this one section right at the end with the elevator has a special place in my mind palace now. You don't fight any hard enemies here, just very mobile ones, and if you fall off the platform into the pit below, it takes a pretty meaningful chunk out of your health, and trust me, without any commands to deal with them from a distance, you'll fall a lot. Having to face my biggest fear as a YouTuber made me a much stronger person, but I will continue to use my powers for evil as long as I live. Taking a page from KH1, the process of getting to Jafar is somehow more difficult than all of his boss fights combined, but hey, at least it didn't take me multiple days to get here this time. Once you beat Agrabah, Maleficent shows up and calls our Jordans fake, leaving us to get through Hollow Bastion without a Keyblade. This section of the game is actually one of my favorites, and I find myself thinking about it every now and then. As you progress through the world, you eventually pick up Donald and Goofy, and they help you fight and traverse the world while you're weaponless. Sadly, during this first fight, I discovered that Melon Mix doesn't tell you what your party members are actively targeting, and I blasted straight through the tutorial like a very smart individual. To briefly explain how the party members work here, you can cycle between 3 different behaviors that they focus on. 1 to prioritize enemies, 1 to prioritize blocks, and 1 to just follow you, which helps teleport them if they manage to get stuck in the ether somehow. On top of this, any commands you have equipped will be converted into moves for them to use, like Goofy Tornado or Donald Thunder. Donald and Goofy were honestly doing pretty well without their commands for most of this section, until we hit the elevator. Donald and Goofy pretty much exclusively struggle with defenders in this part of the game, and conveniently, this elevator has a lot of defenders on it. Having access to commands or even just potions in this section would make it much easier than it was, but sadly, potions are commands, so we shrimply adapt. Thankfully, the rest of this world goes pretty smoothly, and it ends with a 5-phase boss fight. I am so glad this game checkpoints you after each phase because I'm pretty sure I died in every single one. Riku's Dark Aura in this final phase can be easily dodged by just jumping over it, but I did not know that here. Ultimately, I just kinda got lucky with the attacks he chose to use in the end, and Attack Boost cleaned up. This next part of the game is actually my least favorite part, which is sad because it's really cool in concept and I want to like it, but it just doesn't click with me. The gimmick here is that Sora dives headfirst into the bugs to save Riku and loses all of his strength in the process. so you have to explore all the previous worlds to remove the bugs and gather up all your missing power in the process. I'll admit that some of my misery in this section was my own fault because I was using the Oblivion Keyblade. Phenomenal Keyblade under normal circumstances, having attack haste as an innate ability and access to all critical once you level it up is incredible. However, its unique ability Double-Edged Sword, which boosts your attack at the cost of every hit also hurting you, doesn't really work very well when you aren't able to heal on command, but I was clearly very determined to make it work. Hollow Bastion 2 introduces an enemy that has its own special layer of hell dedicated to it, the Danger Bug. What if you wanted to deal damage to the enemy, but Nomura said no? Pretty much a constantly active hitbox. My heart would stop beating for a moment every time I saw these enemies, but the good news was that I never actually had to fight any. This was until I made it to the Wonderland system sector, which hosted the most volatile part of the game because literally every bugged enemy was a danger bug, except for one. I am fully convinced that this was a personal attack against me specifically because literally any command in the game can easily dispose of this enemy and justice will be served. I actually had to take a break at this part. I went outside, took a little walk, touched some grass, and contemplated literally any other career path for myself. I eventually came to the conclusion that maybe Oblivion wasn't the right tool for the job in this situation and switched back to Olympia, my beloved. Completely by accident, I figured out that air combos are just a little more consistent against danger bugs, so paired with attack boost and aerial payback, somehow this section was completed. The trend of everything in Agrabah being significantly harder than Jafar continues here too. Of course, naturally there are danger bugs here, but none of them are required anymore, so I can stay as far away from them as Nomura will allow. This system sector had even more fun surprises waiting for me as it housed the second set of green enemies, and I felt my soul try to leave my body. Thankfully, this section wasn't nearly as bad as the previous one, but it still wasn't great by any means. Realizing that I was one step away from having a brain aneurysm, the game took mercy as the rematch against Riku is literally the easiest part of this world. The next section returns to the 2D side-scrolling gameplay from Traverse Town, and while it's definitely annoying, especially coming off the heels of everything this world has already done to me, it doesn't overstay its welcome. The fight against Maleficent is also very easy in comparison. I think they were very proud of their mini-games in this section because immediately after the side-scrolling segment, the game puts us in the funny rail shooter, and my game plan remains the same. The fight against Sora's Heartless is hands down the most badass part of the game, and I need it to be known that I remembered nothing about this part, so I was running exclusively off of sheer instincts the entire time. Now might be a good time to disclose that this is only my second playthrough of Recoded. The finale of Recoded takes place in Castle Oblivion, but first we have a new Keyblade to level up, the 01. My goodness, what a weapon. These late game Keyblades all have an incredible amount of synergy. A lot of the early game weapons have some pretty useless abilities, but starting with 01, that changes. Not only does it have attack boost as its default ability, which is amazing, when fully leveled up it has access to all critical, heavy blade, and targeting scope. Having all four of these abilities is incredibly overpowered because Heavy Blade lets you hit through the armor of enemies like large bodies and defenders, and Targeting Scope, which is unique to the 01, guarantees that as long as there is an enemy on your screen, your attack will connect no matter how far away it is. In Castle Oblivion, you go through all the worlds you've been to throughout the game, similar to Hollow Bastion 2, but without the danger bugs. Each world in Castle Oblivion has 3 different outcomes you can get depending on your actions in them, and getting all 18 ending cards rewards you with a special cameo from Leon Kingdom Hearts himself and Yuffie, as well as a heatsink belt which we'll use later. Castle Oblivion isn't a very challenging world, but if you're ever planning on getting all the ending cards, then prepare to invest some time because my ass was not figuring that out on my own. After collecting most of the ending cards, the game forcibly throws me into the final boss without my consent, and suddenly, it's time to remember how to fight Roxas. Roxas doesn't stagger very often, and he hits like a truck, so I spent a lot of the fight running away, trying to bait him into using this move where he summons pillars of light around him. This move is the most consistent way to guarantee a stagger and get some good damage in before he recovers. With Roxas defeated, I have officially concluded my second playthrough of Recoded, and we move on to the post-game. Starting the post-game, we do some good old-fashioned level grinding. The end goal here is to do all the system sectors in the main game, and the final system sector that houses a secret boss is level 80. Oathkeeper was initially a pretty underwhelming Keyblade to me. Its only use that I could see at first was that it gets experience boost once it's fully upgraded, but once I started using it, I realized that it's actually the best weapon in the game. What it lacks in damage output, it makes up for with survivability. Its default ability is Undo, which essentially just removes status effects from the game entirely, but then its next two abilities are Regen and Auto Life. Once you beat the game, you can buy the Eternity Charm from the Moogle, which is how you get second chance in this game, and paired with Regen, it basically means you'll never die most of the time. During my level grinding, I used Oathkeeper and immediately noticed that I wasn't constantly on the brink of death all the time, so I just rolled with it for most of the post-game. Starting with Destiny Islands, I just went down the list and completed all the system sectors, collecting as many stat chips as I could along the way. Once I hit Olympus though, I took a detour and replayed the story episode. As I mentioned earlier in the video, beating the game unlocks more of the labyrinth, and all the way in floor 27, there's a very good item. The strategy is the same as the first time, but I used more licenses and regular battles the deeper I got. The item I'm going for in this labyrinth is the Metal Chocobo, the actual best weapon in the game. Not only does it have impact arts and attack boost similar to the Olympia, it also has the luxury of having Brick Wall and Drain at the same time, so it gets both damage output and survivability all in one package. With our new weapon acquired, we finish out the other system sectors, and on the way acquire the Armor Bangle from Destiny Islands, which gives the round block ability, and the Counter Ring from Agrabah, which gives the block counter ability. And these will be used in the final system sector in Hollow Bastion. The Hollow Bastion system sector has 13 floors and allows you to buy an infinite number of every stat chip, which would be nice if it wasn't the last challenge in the game. It's also how you get the Ultima weapon, but it's kinda stinky in this game, so thankfully we don't have to worry about any of the floor challenges here. Once you reach floor 13, you'll encounter the secret boss of the game, Roxas. Again, as you bring his health bar lower, his bugged aura will change from blue to yellow, then red, and finally green. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be in order of easiest to hardest, but strangely enough, the yellow phase was the hardest part of the fight for me. The strategy I used for this fight was using counterattacks, since you're fully invulnerable during them, and Roxas really only has one opening otherwise. The accessories I used were the Eternity Charm for second chance, Armor Charm for round block, Counter Charm for block counter, and the Heatsink Belt for no clock rewind. Since I was using the Metal Chocobo, it meant that status effects were back in the equation, and the most detrimental one was Clock Rewind, because it resets your clock gauge back to level 1, and for this fight it was really important that my clock gauge stay leveled up as much as possible. Having round block meant I was safe in this fight as long as I was blocking, but his light attacks were the only ones I couldn't block, so I had to pay close attention to him to make sure I was able to dodge those. His vulnerability window from the story fight returns here, but once he gets to his yellow phase, it starts losing effectiveness pretty quickly. Speaking of his yellow phase, if your ass is not spamming block after every breath you take, you're dead. I realized after a few attempts that this was going to ultimately come down to luck, because not every counterattack connects, and I'm pretty sure the moves he uses are random, but after a surprisingly short amount of time, I did it. It was a little close at the end. If you're knowledgeable about this game, you might notice that the Avatar sector is absent, and that's because I'm like 90% sure that it's impossible to finish without jumping through an absurd amount of hoops. But if you happen to know a way to easily do it, then please let me know, and I'll probably do it some other time, because I've never done the Avatar sector, but I know what's at the end of it. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, and if you want to see more, then consider subscribing. This was genuinely a really fun challenge. I thought of it because the combos in this game are just really satisfying to look at, and even though it was frustrating at certain points, all the systems they put in this game worked together so well to make it so it never truly felt impossible. Except for the danger bugs.